This is my mom and dad in Oporoza, which is an Ijaw village in the Delta region of Nigeria. They're finally getting the chance to have their traditional marriage done in 2005. Before this point, they never had the money to have this celebration. A few years later, my dad would fully begin working in Nigeria full time. I'm going to use this series to explain what has been going on with my family. And hopefully, this story can help others who have been mistreated, lied to, and abused like ours. You see, my father founded Global West Vessel Specialists in Nigeria around 2008. He poured his blood, sweat, and soul into the company, and he was awarded a federal contract by the Nigerian government in February of 2012. He was dead by August of 2012. After he passed away, the company grossed over $80 million dollars and now is going to earn another $19 million. That's more than enough to fairly compensate the widow of Romeo Tim, my mother. You see, the law is very clear. In Nigeria, when a husband dies, his assets passes to his wife. If his wife's no longer alive, then it passes to his children. And if there are no children, then it passes on to his siblings. But all too often in Nigeria, a man's brother believes he has the first claim to his estates, regardless of the widow's needs. The facts are pretty simple. My mother went through the legal probate process and has 40% of the shares of Global West, which is the largest shareholding in the company. Now, that doesn't give us the right to dictate what happens in the company, but it certainly gives us the right to ask questions. For 13 years, we've asked a simple set of questions. What are the company's earnings, and how much of that will be paid to the estate of Romeo Itimo? Again, the law is pretty clear. Shareholders have the right to know the financial position of the company. Now, this simple question has caused Mr. Leke, the self-appointed manager of Global West, to make all kinds of claims that he is being bullied or insulted. It's a very interesting choice of words. Imagine the odds of this battle. My mom, a widow, versus my father's two brothers, Winfred and William Itima, minority shareholders, Rear Admiral Ombo, directors such as BC Afalabi and Mr. Leke, and finally, a high-profile lawyer, senior advocate Adinke Olumide Fusiga. But right now, it all starts and ends with Mr. Leke. He has the power to do the right thing, but seems to be going in the opposite direction. Who is Mr. Leke? Well, this is a man my father met as a secretary, a man my father made a shareholder and director in his company. In fact, the year my father died, my parents allowed his wife to live in our home in Houston, Texas, where his son was born. My mom took care of his wife and made sure she got to all of her appointments. And now, to repay that kindness from my parents, he's become the largest obstacle for my mother to be fairly compensated. He's even sued me for defamation, trying to force my silence. I get it. The story is complicated. It's long. I know a lot of people don't understand what's going on, and I know it seems complicated. But in this series, I'll explain it all. Our story isn't unique. All across Nigeria, widows and orphans fight for scraps, while tradition shields the powerful. If sharing my family's fight can help others, I know my father will be proud, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. May God help us. It's easy to point fingers and blame other people. And I do believe these men have done some terrible things, but honestly, I place a lot of the blame on myself. I'd like to read you an excerpt from an email I received from Mr. Leke after asking him again the simple question of what's owed to the estate of my father, and how much money the company has earned. Mr. Leke states, my late friend, more or less a brother from different parents, your father, Captain Romeo, of cherished and blessed memory, would not address or treat me the way you've been doing. How come you, who had no single drop of sweat to Global West, other than being the son of Captain Romeo, feel entitled to be treating others who, unlike you, contributed some drops of sweat, no matter how little it seems in your eyes, as you've been doing? I know it's kind of hard to follow, but basically he's saying that, I don't know, I've been bullying him or treating him badly, and I have no right to ask the questions I've been asking, and I'm being entitled. So there's some things inside that I've never told anyone that I'd like to share here. Before my father died, I was working as a firefighter in Baltimore County. And the job came with some risk to my life and health. So I didn't feel like, I felt like if I was going to risk my life as a firefighter, I could at least help my father in a job that I knew was a bit dangerous. So at some point in 2012, before he passed, I called him and I asked him if he needed me, I would come work with him in Global West. And he was silent for a long time. And then finally he said, no. He said that everybody in the family can't be doing the same thing. That's not the way to build strength in the family. And then he also wanted me to finish my master's and get my doctorate. So he told me, don't worry about it. One of the last things he said, which was really odd, he sounded so tired. He's like, everything's going to be okay. But he doesn't want me to come work with him in Nigerian Global West. So I said, okay. And the last words I said to him was that I was proud of him. And that's not something that how we generally talk to each other, showing that kind of emotion. But I meant it. I did not know the gravity or scope of what Global West was, but I knew that he was reaching heights and doing things that he wanted to do. And as a young man at the time, I was 24, 25, I understood how difficult that was, and I really was proud of him. Now, Mr. Leke says I have not offered a drop of sweat to Global West. I tried. I asked my Uncle Winfred several times what was going on with the company. If at any point he would have allowed me to, or if Leke would have allowed me to work and help to bring some kind of assistance to the company my father died for, I would have jumped at the chance. Absolutely jumped at the chance. So after graduating with my undergraduate degree, I got my master's in public administration, which deals heavily with the implementation of government planning and management of government systems. I could have helped out tremendously in a company that had a public-private partnership with the government of Nigeria, but that was not wanted. I would have dropped everything I was doing to assist. But that's neither here nor there. They never wanted me to be part of this. They never wanted me to ask any questions. And honestly, I'm a person who believes in order, who believes in things going in a proper direction. And I think I've made a lot of mistakes in how some of these things were handled. I wish I would have had a better outcome. And so I've written something to my father. These are things that I would say to my father if he was alive, and some of the things that I think about honestly a lot at night, in moments of silence and moments of contemplation. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for thinking that just because you didn't have advanced degrees, you weren't brilliant. I'm sorry for wasting so much of my teenage years rebelling against you. I'm sorry I wasn't in Nigeria to protect you. I'm sorry for not being strong enough to protect the fruits of your labor. I'm sorry for allowing Winfred to push us out of the company. I'm sorry for not being able to reconcile with him before he died. I'm sorry I allowed Papa Willie's intimidation
to make me drop the lawsuit. I'm sorry I didn't try to stop Leke taking over the company after Winfred died. I'm sorry I haven't protected your legacy. I don't know how this will end, but I promise to tell your story and follow in your footsteps by helping those in need, being a defender of the truth, and doing what I can to make this world a better place. I'm trying. I don't know how this will end. I doubt that we will ever receive, I doubt that we'll ever be fairly compensated, but I am doing my best to make sure I do the right thing.
He was among the youngest people to acquire respectable credentials of pilotage. He was among his mates, he was a champion. Before we knew it, he said that was not enough. He had to leave Escravos. He left for Lagos. And while in Lagos, most of our people sojourned to Lagos, then the capital of Nigeria, to do this seaman job. Your father went there and did it with a difference. Before he knew it, he felt he wanted more knowledge to be able to deliver, to make his people be the champion, to make his people have a taste of what God has bestowed them. Before we knew it, he decided to leave this country. He left the shores of this country and went to the US.
Powerful words. But the question is, what did my dad do when he got to the United States? By day, he washed dishes in restaurants. By night, he drove taxis, scraping together every dollar he could for his maritime paperwork. By September 1989, he signed on his first merchant marine vessel in the United States. He climbed every deck and every rank, from ordinary seaman to a bosun, third mate, second mate, chief mate, until 2001 in January, he became the first Nigerian to earn a master's license in the U.S. Merchant Marine, making him a captain.
Captains that he served under praised his tireless work ethic, his calm under pressure. He was truly valued as an exemplary employee and leader within the maritime industry.
To him, each voyage was more than cargo and charts. It was him exemplifying his Ijaw heritage and showing that his tribe and his people had much to offer to the world. But every milestone came at a cost. My father had logged over 48,000 hours at sea, had been on the high seas for over 3,866 days, with 12-hour shifts under the stars and storms, birthdays spent on distant docks, missing anniversaries. But it was a sacrifice he made because he had a goal in mind.
So, who, so when I think about my father, I think about this entrepreneurial man who was never satisfied with just a 9 to 5 or being on the high seas. He always wanted to create and make something. And when I was very young, I didn't know this fully or understand it fully, but he was able to patent an invention, a hydrofoil stabilizer for maritime motors. I had no idea what that meant when I was little, but if anyone knows the patent process in the United States, it's very difficult, it's very expensive, and most people aren't able to patent their inventions. And just a basic understanding of a patent is that once somebody creates an invention, that patent makes it makes the world recognize, or at least the people in the United States recognize, that nobody else can copy that invention that you made without compensating the owner of that invention fairly. It's amazing to me that this man from the village of Gunakunuma could come to the United States, not only make this invention, but patent it as well. It did not bring him any financial success, but just the fact that he did it was absolutely amazing. That was back in 97. My dad took that same type of entrepreneurial energy and he kept pushing and pushing and pushing until around 2005, 2006, he went back to Nigeria and started working with Mike Lely Marine Limited. And he brought his expertise, his knowledge to that company, and it was able to help them get contracts from individuals in the UK, from the US, and really help expand that company. I think in that area, in that space, that gave him some time to also learn or relearn the Nigerian system. And he met a lot of individuals that he would eventually bring over to Global West. You know, Mike Lely had a lot of success, but ultimately it was not his company. He was assisting and working within the confines of somebody else's structure that they had built. And he had different goals, different dreams, different ambitions, which happens in companies sometimes, right? Every business partner is not going to be your business partner for the rest of your life. But I'm proud of my father and the individuals within Mike Lely for finding an amicable way to split off and do their own thing. Nobody took anything from anybody. Everybody was fairly compensated, and people went off to do their own things. While he was in Mike Lely, he met a man named Leke. Leke was a secretary who, after being a secretary, ended up becoming a manager, a general manager in Mike Lely. And it was within Mike Lely, my father met Leke. He believed him to be a truthful man, an honest man, a hard-working individual. And he also had something that my dad didn't, an advanced degree. And he felt like this individual, Mr. Leke, would be a person that he could count on, that he could bring into his fold. And anybody who knows my father, once he believes in you, believes in your work ethic, believes in your ability to be honest, I mean, he will help you to no end. So that's, in a nutshell, how he met Mr. Leke, how he came back to Nigeria. Global West wasn't first. Mike Lely was first. And from there, he got his feet wet and started the company Global West. I think one of the main things he picked up from Mike Lely was that, you know, while everybody is trying to find high, while everybody is trying to find things like in the oil and gas sector or shipping lanes, obvious ways to make money, my dad saw the potential and the issues that were going on in the Nigerian waterway and the lucrative contract that existed for a company that could assist the federal government in policing the Nigerian waterways, meaning that he saw that there were a lot of ships entering into Nigerian waterways not paying the proper duties and tariffs, and the Nigerian government was missing out on millions of naira and dollar every year. So if he could bring that system that he saw the U.S. Coast Guard doing in the United States to Nigeria, he could not only make a huge impact in the country, but he could also help his people by gaining gainful employment and also make money at the same time. And in my father, that was what he always sought after, a win-win situation for everybody. And that's what he went after. After Mike Lely, he incorporated Global West in the United States in 2008, and I think he also incorporated it in Nigeria around 2008 or 2009. The point of Global West, what it does is that it helps the Nigerian government, it helps the Nigerian government police the Nigerian waterways. He brought the technical expertise, the profit sharing ideas, and the capabilities in what he saw in the United States, and just brought that idea to Nigeria and a public-private partnership with the Nigerian government, and helped them recapture the revenue that they were missing out on. And it was highly lucrative. But before they gave him a permanent contract, they had to give him a pilot study, right? They had to see if it was even worth their time. So from like around 2008, 2009, up until the point they gave him the contract in 2012, it was just a pilot. They were just showing the Nigerian government that they had the capabilities to actually execute on this business plan they had put together. And they showed that they could do it. So in 2012, I believe in January or February, they actually awarded my father the contract. Now, it was a lucrative contract, and there was all kinds of stipulations, but the basics of the contract was that my father would provide the boats, he would provide the personnel, he would get the offenders, which is the boats who aren't paying the proper dues and tariffs. He would go find them and bring them to the proper authorities. They would pay the proper dues and tariffs, and Global West would get a percentage of the income that came into the federal government. So in essence, he was taking all the risk. He'd have to get the supplies, he'd have to get the boats, he'd have to get the personnel, and they would not be paid unless they fulfilled their obligations. It was a highly capital intensive project, which is why, and he would tell us, he had to get a lot of investors. He had to get a lot of investments. He did not have the capital to do it all alone. But it's also why he was always on those operations, almost always, because he believed in this project so much. He didn't believe in cutting corners. He wasn't going to take any bribes. He also knew his name was on the line here. He was the one who was saying that he could get these things done. He was the one who asked these investors for the capital, and he was going to make sure that this operation was successful. And if it ended up not being successful, it wouldn't be because of mismanagement, right? He was never actually paid out for that contract. In August, before he died, they had just began to submit a lot of their or rather, the federal government had just began to start receiving some of their payments, so they had not actually paid out Global West any money, which is why when he passed away, he only had $6,000 in his account. I mean, he gave his life for this. He did everything he could. So when people ask or people say my father wasn't the only one involved in this company and he did not deserve all the money, we know that. We understand that 110%. But he was the key mover in this company. He had the majority shareholdings. It's not as if he was a sideline player.
The most repeated report of what happened on the night of August 7th, 2012 starts very mildly. Captain Romeo was aboard the Master Barutu, a state-of-the-art vessel with a bulletproof hull. They were patrolling just off the coast of Nigeria when they saw a self-propelled barge being circled by a smaller craft. Romeo ordered the crew to head over and investigate. As soon as they pulled close enough to the smaller vessel, it let out a series of shots in their direction. The shots were unable to penetrate the bulletproof hull, so they pressed on. But before they knew it, a large caliber gun began firing at them from the barge.
So they were chasing the little craft that was patrolling around, while there was several gunshots from the self-propelled barge. So at a point, they wanted to eat the craft to sink it. So in the process, the shooting was just too much. So they were hacks. They advised themselves to retrieve. So there they retrieved. So as they were about to enter the escravos entrance, there they said they ran into the wreck because it was on high tide. So while they were on the wreck, they came out that they should assist to bring down the boat from the wreck. There, according to their reports, my boss came out. He was standing on the side of the boat and was pushing the wreck. There suddenly a wave came and hit the boat from the side, and they fell overboard. Not just him, the captain of the vessel named Henry too fell overboard from the stern. So the people that was with Henry threw life ring for him to bring him on board. But there was one military man standing with my boss, and the military man ran in calling the other people that they should come and help, that Captain Romeo is in the water. In the process, according to their report, another wave hit them again. There it took the boat from the side where it wrecked to the other side. There they lost sight on Captain Romeo. And later they were looking for him. They couldn't find it. That was their report. But from all this, I still don't believe the report, because I don't believe reports of men. I only believe the reports of God.
My mother would tell me stories about my grandmother fishing late at night on the river. In those days, few pilots would dare guide the large container ships through the narrow waterways at night. Romeo was one of those brave few. Every village had its own foghorn signal for when the pilots returned, and when my grandmother would hear those two long bellows, followed closely by a short blast at that hour of the night, she knew Romeo had made it back. He was barely 20, but he piloted the massive vessels like a seasoned vet with little more than skill and instinct to the dock at the dead of night. It's tragically ironic, 30 years later, this same man, with far more experience and skill, would die at the mouth of that same river on a craft that possessed one of the best maritime navigation systems that money could buy.
A man like Romeo don't just fall down and die. That don't happen. I mean, fall overboard in water. Romeo is a strong, healthy young man. And that, I mean, I hearing that alone, like I said, mysterious. I can't believe that he died with an accident, as it's been explained, as being simple. I just can't swallow that.
Anytime I get to thinking about it too much, of course, I get angry. The sadness part lasted about a couple of days, cried when I heard it. But after that, it was just anger. White, hot anger. And it's the person that I've known since birth. And you just telling me that he died like that? I never get to see him again, never get to laugh. I can't, I just feel like I can't let it go. Somebody has to be brought to justice for this.
Now, my Uncle Winfred was the genesis of our problems when it came to being fairly compensated by Global West. I've known my Uncle Winfred all my life, up until the point that he died. He lived with us in the United States. I trusted him with every part of my being, which is why in 2012, when he said he was taking over the company, we had no problem with it. Never had any issue with it. He worked just as hard as my father in the United States on those ships for years. In fact, I believe a year or two before my father died, he told my Uncle Winfred to come to Nigeria and work with him. He had just gotten Global West to the point where he felt like it was stable enough for him to leave his job in the United States and come work with him in Nigeria. My uncle was getting older. The work that they were doing on the high seas was really labor intensive. And my father felt like his brother shouldn't be doing that anymore. So that's how he came. He was not an original shareholder. He didn't start the company with my father. He came about a year or so before my dad died. He takes over the company. And almost immediately things started going in a weird direction. But we never thought that it would be this bad. We always thought Winfred would have our best interests at heart. I really do struggle to reconcile the person or the things that Winfred did with who I knew when I was growing up. I wish things could have been different. But what we saw and what really alerted us to things changing was that, you know, we know the type of work Winfred was doing here in the States, right? He was telling us Global West was making no money. And he was buying huge houses in Nigeria. He's buying a house in the States. He was buying multiple cars. I mean, in 1 year alone, I think he spent like almost $100,000 to $200,000 on cars by themselves, right? And there might have been a plausible explanation for that. I don't know, right? But about 2 years after my father died, we started asking, like, hey, you know, is there some kind of conversation coming out of this? Like, you know, your life seems to be changing in trajectory. You seem to be going up in status. Like, what is there for us? And that wasn't to accuse him of anything. It was just like, we would like to know. And he just kept saying that there was no money coming into the company. So we were like, okay. But we were hearing whispers. Like, people were telling us, like, nah, we're getting paid a good amount of money. But I always told people who would quote unquote leak information to me, you know, unless you have real proof that Winfred has done something, I can't believe it. And we never got that. About 3 years after my dad died, you know, I asked Winfred, we went to Nigeria, and I asked him point blank, you know, forget the money. Can you just tell us about this company, this entity that my dad died for? Tell us what's going on about it. Like, I would like to know. I would like to be more involved. And he told me he could tell me nothing about the company at all. And it was at that moment that my relationship with Winfred changed utterly and completely. I could not believe that this man would tell me that I could not know anything about the company that my dad created, worked for, and died for. And so that's when I started to become suspicious, and I started to seek the truth out on my own. Now, as time progressed, I would go to meet my other uncles, my dad's other brothers, and ask them, beg them, hey, please, let's all have this family meeting. Let's figure out what's going on. We're not getting any answers. I don't know who to turn to. Help us talk to Winfred. And nothing would ever happen. In fact, I remember Papa Willie. I went to Warri and I asked Papa Willie for some help. I said, please, let's bring everybody together. Let's meet. Let's talk this thing through. And he said, okay, no problem. He'll get in contact with Winfred and he'll find a way to have us all meet and we can figure out what's going on. And I waited and waited and waited. Nothing happened. And eventually I had to go back to the United States for work. So I started to see that my uncles would be no help whatsoever. So I decided that in 2017, I was going to file a lawsuit. I did not come to that decision easily, but I was like, you know what? If the family can't help us get answers, none of my father's friends can help us get answers, then maybe we have to go through the legal route. Like, let's find out what in the world is going on. So this is in 2017. But before I did that, I flew to Nigeria one more time. And for my folks who are from Nigeria, live in Nigeria, they'll understand some of these locations I'm talking about. The house my father, we had rented a place in Lekki Phase 1. I had an uncle, Wilson Ntima, who lived in Okokomaiko. My plan was, and this was an elder uncle, he was older than Winfred. My plan was to take an Okada, which is a bike, right? Get on the back of a motorcycle because that traffic to Okokomaiko is terrible. Go to Wilson's house, talk to him about Winfred, show him all the information that I had found about mismanagement of money and all the suspicions I had, and see if I can get him to come with me back to Lekki Phase 1 to go and speak with Uncle Winfred. So that's what I did. Went to Okokomaiko early in the morning, knocked on my Uncle Wilson's door. He was surprised to see me, and I sat at his house and we talked for almost an hour about everything. And he was kind of surprised and shocked, and I said, okay, I need you to come with me to Winfred's house. Let's go and talk to him. And he was scared. Like, the look in his eyes was fearful. And so I thought that maybe he felt like I was telling him, let's go and confront Winfred angrily. I'm like, no, we don't have to confront him angrily. I just want you to come with me so we could talk to him, because up until this point, nobody has come and talked with Winfred with me. There's got to be some way. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I don't know what I'm looking at. Maybe there's a reasonable explanation for all this. Please come with me. And he said he could not. He said he could not come with me. So that was my second way of knowing that something was really, really wrong. That my own uncles could not meet with me in Winfred. Like, that didn't even make any sense to me. That never in my life would I have believed that was possible. These men who I've known pretty much all my life, we can't sit in one room and talk. So I decided to go to Winfred's house on my own. Before I filed that lawsuit, I had to find out, is there any way I can get answers from this man? So I took the Okada back from Okokomaiko to Lekki Phase 1. I went to Winfred's house. And this is also something I did for the very first time. I had a post ready on Facebook because I didn't know what was going to happen to me when I went to that man's house. And I posted on Facebook right when I was going into his gate that I am going to meet with Winfred Atima. If anything should happen to me, this is where I am. I'm going to ask him about what's happening with my father's company. So I went to this house. I greeted him. And I asked him, like, what is going on? Like, why can't we know what's happening? What's the big deal? And somebody called him. I guess somebody must have told him what, saw my post on Facebook. And he said, do you think that I'm taking things from Romeo's family? I said, I don't know what to think. Why can't you just tell us what's going on? And basically he's like, you need to get out of here. I'm not taking anything from Romeo's family. And some other things. I mean, it was a long time ago. I don't know exactly what he said, but basically the visit was over. And I decided, okay, fine. If you're not going to tell me anything, maybe the courts can help me. And that's what I did. We filed our first lawsuit in 2017 to get answers about what was going on. So speaking of lawsuits, we have filed 3 different lawsuits against Global West and had 3 different lawyers. One of the tactics powerful men use, especially when they know they're wrong or potentially can lose in court, they'll stall. And the reason why they're stalling and they don't want to come to court is because they're hoping that you lose money, time, or patience, that you run out of one of those things and that you have to drop the lawsuit. To this day, neither Winfred or the shareholders or anybody from Global West has come to court to show the evidence that they've done the right thing. Not once. Not yet. Yet, Mr. Leke has a time to sue me for defamation. If you all are doing the right thing, if I'm nuts, if I'm crazy, just go to court, present your evidence, and then be done with it. Another thing that happens is I'm not sure why our lawyers started to change their behaviors. But the first 2 lawyers we had, every time I thought that we were making some progress, things would change up. They would be slower to respond. I couldn't get any feedback from them. And I don't know why that is. Maybe they themselves felt like the case was hopeless or that they weren't making any traction. I don't know if they were intimidated themselves. I have no idea. And a big thing was we were going against a senior advocate, Mr. Adienke Olumide Fusika. This is a powerful, prominent lawyer. Global West had millions of dollars at their disposal. We were just a regular old family, right? The odds of us winning were very, very low. And I do think that at some point we must have gotten close because Papa Willie, my uncle, threatened me in 2020, threatened my life and my mother's life, threatened to have us killed if we didn't drop the lawsuit. And that's what I did. I dropped the lawsuit. So, we have dealt with so much regarding this company. It's actually unreal. And the money, there's so much money there. I don't think it would hurt them at all to fairly compensate us. I don't think that there's anything wrong with us being fairly compensated. Why would that be such a big deal? I really can't understand it. As I mentioned, my mother was up against a formidable legal opponent. In 2017, my uncle hired senior advocate Aidinke Olumide Fusika as his attorney to defend him against our case. Now, this man is a prolific lawyer, absolutely great at his job, and high profile. In fact, on his website, it states that he is also well known as across the appellate court for his incisive brief writing, which has meant that he has hardly lost any case of appeals, whether before the Court of Appeal or Supreme Court of Nigeria. He is regularly invited to speak at important social and legal events. Now, the clip I'm about to show you is Senior Advocate Fusika speaking at a nationally broadcasted news show in Nigeria. And I want you to take a listen to what he has to say.
Since we will not, as a people, voluntarily obey the law, the Supreme Court should just close its eyes and enforce the law. Let the heavens fall. It doesn't matter. Just enforce the law. Why? If the law says this is it, don't go about ifs and buts and all that, and just say that is the law and pronounce it. You will see a change in attitude.
You see, in Nigeria, a senior advocate is a lawyer that's kind of set above all other lawyers. They have seniority. Again, you see this layered type of tiered system. Again, cultural norms tend to lean towards a individual seniority in the Nigerian culture, and that does not go away within the legal system, which at times can be quite frustrating, and it will. In my experience, I have seen senior advocates use their position to oppress or push down lower level lawyers, because some of these lower level lawyers one day would like to become senior advocates themselves. Now, it's important to listen to what this man just said. He is saying that the Supreme Court should follow the law as it is written, should enforce the law, and not care about the social consequences that may come as a result of following through the law. The law is the law. Well, it's clear the rights of a shareholder in Nigeria. The 2020 CAMA Act, which is the Companies Allied Matters Act, which gives a understanding, or sets the law rather, for what rights companies have, shareholders, etc., clearly states that shareholders have a right to know about what's going on in the company. They have a right to be updated about all issues and matters going on in the company. They have a right to enforce their will and vote upon matters that are pertinent to the company. So why in the world, if that act exists, if those laws are in the book, why shouldn't Global West follow them? You see, I'm not accusing Senior Advocate Fusika of anything illegal at all. What I am telling and saying is that he obviously seems to understand morally the difference between right and wrong. So morally, how can he make a distinction about what's going on with the Supreme Court and what they should be doing, but at the same time help these men deny my mom, a widow, what she's rightfully entitled to? When all this is over, he's going to expect payment for the work that he has done for Global West. I think that's fair to say. Why can't the family of Romeo expect the payment from the work that our father has done? Why can't my mom expect the payment, the fair compensation for the work her husband has done? He has been the instrument that's been used by my Uncle Winfred and now by Mr. Leke to make sure we do not see fair compensation or understand what's going on with the company. A funny thing happened when we filed this lawsuit. So Global West had their accounts frozen by the Nigerian government. The EFCC had claimed that Global West had done some illegal things and they had frozen their accounts. The lawyer I had at the time was able to get all of the written testimony and evidence that the EFC had pulled for Global West. That was testimony from Winfred, testimony from BC Alpha Lobby, the different directors, bank statements, payments. I mean, all these things that we had been asking for, all of a sudden I had at my fingertips. It was 500 plus pages. That's how I've been able to get the information I have. I mean, without that EFCC case against Global West, I still wouldn't know much about the company that my father built. And so a lot of people ask me, why am I so suspicious of my uncle? There was a company called Molecular Power Systems. That company was created by my father, and there were 3 shareholders, Mr. BC, Mr. Leke, and my father. They each had 33% of the shares of that company. Now, I assume that this was going to be maybe a subsidiary of Global West, maybe it's going to be a contractor of Global West, maybe it was going to be its own thing, but I could see that clearly in April of 2012, this company was made. What happened after my father died was Winfred and Papa Willie were added to the shareholders. And instead of my father having 33% of the company, he had 1.2%. Now, the law clearly states that if any change of shares happen in the company, shareholders have to be notified. You can't just change shares whenever you want. And that was the first thing. That was odd. And I would always ask, why would you all change these shares? Why did Winfred and Papa Willie's name get added there? Why do all these people now have these huge shareholding amounts? And then I started reading the testimony of Winfred Itima, and in his EFC testimony, his sworn testimony, he said Molecular was paid $4.2 million by Global West. It didn't really give a reason or rationale why Molecular was paid that money. But he also said that one of the largest vessels that Global West ever purchased was MV Horton. He stated in the EFC testimony that MV Horton was purchased with Global West funds. However, the bill of sale had Molecular Power Systems name on it. Now, this company is not a company that was operating like Global West. It didn't have a large contract like Global West. Where'd they get the money to buy this huge ship? Why would a ship with Global West funds, why would the bill of sale had Molecular Power Systems as the buyer? And you know what? There may be a reasonable, rational reason why they did that. However, why did they change the shareholdings for my father's shareholdings to be 1.2%? So in essence, now instead of having a third of the company, he has less than 2%. So any assets, any money that's being, any dividends paid out, he gets, or the estate gets 1.2%. Those kind of things are the things that I'm talking about. They have shown time and time again to be making these decisions that are in the best of their interests and not in the best of our interests. Maybe there was a great reason for doing it. Why wouldn't they tell us, hey, you know what, this is what we're doing with the company. This is what we're going to do. We're going to pay you guys off for this company, something your father created, but we're not going to use it like in this way. We're going to use it in this other way. But understanding business, understanding assets, it's very clear and simple. If you use Global West funds to purchase a boat and using Global West funds to maintain it and using Global West funds to, employees to maintain it, why in the world would you put it underneath the company where you have the majority shareholdings? Does that sound like something that's reasonable? Does that make any sense? And then they question why I would ask them questions. They get so upset when I ask them, what is this about? Tell me, how does this make sense? They say that I don't have the right to even ask them these questions, but my dad is dead. My father is dead. He gave his life for this. Why would you do this? Why should I believe you? Why did I have to go through EFCC testimony to find out you did these things? You have shown that you have not been honest to us. Now, one of the major issues I have with Winfred, outside of the money and keeping us out of the company, There's a process in Nigeria when a person dies. You go through what they call the probate process. And that is when you petition the government and get the assets that belong to the person that died transferred into the estate. So the shares of my father's company in Global West and also the shares in Molecular, we had to go through that probate process. Now there's one that had to be done. The company simply has to recognize that the name of the shares have been changed. It's just signing off on a document and submitting that information to the Corporate Affairs Commission in Nigeria. It's a formality. We've already gone through this legal process. Now, I believe Winfred made a lot of money from Global West. I don't have all the proof. I have the transfers. Who knows what he ended up doing, how much money he made, whatever. But the very least he could have done was allowed us to, or signed off on the shares of my father being updated to the estate of Romeo. If he would have done that one thing, then today I wouldn't be having to fight Leke in court once again, all over again. Now, Mr. Leke has his chance. He came in and he said he is now the new managing director of Global West, and he's going to do right by our family. Okay, fine. Well, these shares have been transferred into the estate of Romeo. You sign off on the shares having being owned in the new name, and he wouldn't. I talked to senior advocate Adinke Olumide Fusika, who sounded like a very reasonable person. He said, yeah, the shares should be transferred into you all's name. It's been done properly. We'll have it signed off. We just need your mother, yourself, and your brother Zion to sign off on a document, send it over to my office, and we'll have the shares updated. That was in November of 2024. This is July. They still haven't done it. 13 years. 13 years. 13 years. And the shares of my father's company, the company that he started, the company that he worked for, the company that he died for, we have still not been able to have the shares recognized as being put into the estate of Romeo. Absolutely no excuse. We're not asking these people for money. We're not asking these people to do it for us. Just sign off. They refuse to. And then they will say that we're crazy, that they have done everything they could do right for Romeo's family, that they they have the best intentions in the world. But why? Why wouldn't you do that? Mr. Leke, I'm asking you, why? That is the estate that my mother owns, that she is in charge of. That is how compensation runs. You are compensated based off of the shares that you have in the company. And you have decided to stop us from taking part in that. So for my Uncle Winfred, I don't know why he did that. I have no idea. For Leke, you have no excuse. None whatsoever. Now, I think it's important to understand clearly what Mr. Leke has done. As I mentioned, my father met Mr. Leke. He was a secretary at Mike Lely Marine Limited, and later became a manager within that organization. My father took him from that organization, made him a shareholder and a director in his company because at Global West, because he felt like he was an honest man, he felt like he was a hard worker, and he had advanced degrees, and he felt like, coupled with all those things, he could help bring his dream to fruition. Right? Mr. Leke did not have any real knowledge about being a seaman at all, but my father felt like that he could teach him and he could show him. So he came over to Global West, and then in 2011, Mr. Leke had the opportunity to be the special advisor maritime to President Goodluck Jonathan. This was an appointment that, as I understand it, my father and other Ijaw men helped petition for him to get that role. He took that role, and when you have a role within the federal government, you have to relinquish any shareholdings in private companies. So in 2011, Leke resigned as a director in Global West. He also forfeited his shares. But before he left, he made sure to bring in somebody that could, I would say, protect his interests, but maybe he was just bringing in somebody who he felt would be a good fit for Global West. That was Mr. B.C. Afolabi. Mr. B.C. Afolabi also did not have any maritime experience, but he was supposed to be brought in a management capacity. Now, initially, he wanted a salary that my dad said he could not pay him. In fact, my father said, you cannot be paid more than the actual individuals who are going out to sea doing the work. So Mr. B.C. Afolabi said, well, fine. I am going to work here. I'm not going to accept any money until you can compensate me at a point that at a number that he felt was reasonable. My dad was like, okay. This was a couple months before my father died. Then my father died. Winfred made Mr. BC a director, and that was that. Now, Mr. Leke did not reveal that he had forfeited his shares or from Global West to us. This whole time, I thought he was a shareholder. It wasn't until after Winfred died and Mr. Leke started to do all these weird things, I had to go back into the Corporate Affairs Commission and look at all the records that were sent in about Global West. And I found out that he actually forfeited his shares. So he's not even a shareholder anymore. Also, Mr. BC resigned from the company in 2015. Once they got in trouble with the EFCC, he resigned from the company. Now, you've got two individuals who are no longer with the company, but now are back in the company saying they're going to run the show. When it came to Mr. Leke coming back into the company, he held this shareholders meeting, and all this information you can find online on the Price of Dream website, all the communications I had with Mr. Leke. He wanted to be the managing director, and I asked him in the shareholders meeting. I just said, what is your plans with the company and what do you know about the company? He told me he knew nothing about the company and he didn't have any plans just yet. He wanted to become the MD first and then he would make plans, which just did not sound right to me. So I decided not to vote for him. We withheld our vote. And he told me rather, that he could become the MD without our votes. So he didn't need us to vote for him. I said, okay, fine. And I always told Mr. Leke, hey, man, I'm not going to fight you on this. I've already been threatened because of this company issue. You guys can do whatever you want, but just do the right thing. And so what brought all this issue back to the forefront is NMASA was, Global West was found not guilty of the issues that the federal government said they were being charged of. And there are the final payments that the federal government was supposed to be paying Global West. And that's like about $19 million. So Mr. Leke was spearheading the movement to handle the negotiations, or at least that's what I thought he was doing. Come to find out, he was sending Mr. BC there, somebody who had resigned from the company. And then I found out again that he wasn't the genesis of the settlement of this NMASA payment. He was just along for the ride. So for me, I just couldn't understand why he was allowing somebody who resigned from the company to come back, why he wouldn't go to the negotiations himself. I mean, it just sounded so backwards. The managing director of a company will not go to Lagos to handle negotiations that he said that he was the reason that they're happening at all. He claimed that it was because of him. Why wouldn't you go to Lagos and handle that? He said he had better things to do with his time. What do you have better to do with your time? What company do you have that is preparing to pay you $19 million? Why do you feel like this is an afterthought for you? And if it is an afterthought for you, then you weren't the right person to be the MD in the first place. I asked him, Mr. Leke, to take Jolly Aisede, that's my other uncle, bring him along as part of the individuals who were going to the NMASA to handle these negotiations. Jolly, my Uncle Jolly was the operations manager. He has key insight and details and information about what was going on with the company. Mr. Leckett already stated that he did not know what was going on with the company. If you don't know what's going on with the company, wouldn't it make sense to have the operations manager there with you? But no. You see, at every chance and every opportunity they have to do the right thing, they always find some way to not do that. Any chance or any way that we may get some information about what's going on with the company, they always want to cut those people out. They know that if Jolly was there, Uncle Jolly was there, he would tell us what's going on with these negotiations. So Mr. Leckett said no. Okay, fine. So since you have gone on to take all those actions by yourself, I thought it was time for me to step back in and challenge Mr. Leckett, because I didn't feel like he was doing what was right for the company. I definitely didn't think he was doing what was right for us. So that's why I stepped back in and filed a lawsuit against Mr. Leckett. That's why we had the kind of conversations we had. But never in any of those conversations did I ever disrespect him. In fact, I always gave him the opportunity and the chance to do the right thing. And he always decided to do the opposite. So now here we are. Mr. Leckett, great job. You've won. You've turned everybody against us. You are now the MD of the company. They're going to pay the money. You're going to get it. You're going to do whatever with it. But at the end of the day, there's still a God. And you and I will have to answer for what we have done in this life. Everybody will. So I hope you're doing the right thing. I'd like to give a message of hope for anyone who's going through something similar. Me losing my earthly father has brought me a lot closer to my heavenly father. And that didn't happen instantaneously. My dad has been dead for 15 years now. And for a long time, I thought that my best contribution would be to find a way to replace his income. So I was always running and trying to make some money to help take care of my family. And I was able to become directors in other people's companies, work for some Fortune 500 companies, and be in these big offices. And it was a cool experience. But God revealed to me not too long ago that, that isn't it. That money is not everything. And not only is it not everything, that there's something far important for me to be doing. And I found my purpose. I'm going to follow in the footsteps of my earthly father and seek out a profession that is helping people. And my family's doing great. We're not perfect, but I found my wonderful, great wife. I have wonderful nephews. I have wonderful sister-in-laws. Overall, things happen the way that God wants them to happen. But I do know I'm a better man for it. And I pray for these men that have done whatever they've done. I pray for my father. I pray for my Uncle Winfred. I hope they all have peace, because there's nothing in this world that's more important than peace. So if you're dealing with the same thing, I know it's not the advice everybody wants, but turn to God, because when men fail you, He absolutely won't. Thank you.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.